Okay. Welcome to the Hennepin-University Partnership webinar series. Today's webinar is the HUP Collaborative Research Assistantship Research Symposium, and it's presented by this year's HCRA cohort. My name is Margaret Stembo-Turvey, and I'm a Senior Project Manager with the Hennepin-University Partnership, and we're also joined by the HUP Director, Amy Delahanty. For those who may be new to HUP, we are a collaboration between Minnesota's most populous county and its only land-grant university. At HUP, we're dedicated to catalyzing and supporting mutually beneficial relationships. The partnership has led to nearly 500 joint projects, combining academic research and local expertise to inform policy and practice for the benefit of county residents. The goals of this webinar series are to offer information exchange and showcase research. Today's symposium highlights the HUP Collaborative Research Assistantship, or HCRA. This summer program connects graduate students from the University of Minnesota with projects proposed by Hennepin County departments, all focused on advancing equity and climate action. The assistantship is designed as a partnership. Students gain meaningful applied research experience and professional development opportunities, while county staff gain fresh insights and tools to advance their work. Together, the program supports both student learning and county innovation, reflecting HUP's commitment to collaborative learning, shared impact, and building stronger public systems through thoughtful relationships. Before we get started, I have just a couple of Zoom reminders for the audience. Your video, audio, and chat are not enabled, so if you need any support from the HUP team, please use the Q&A function. Also, throughout the program, each student will have time at the end of their presentation to ask a question, to answer questions. So if you'd like to ask a question, please also submit that through the Q&A function. The HUP team will monitor questions throughout, and the students will save time to address them at the end of their presentations. As I mentioned, this webinar is being recorded and it will be available tomorrow to share with any of your colleagues. One additional note for today's structure, because we have multiple presenters, each student will begin at their designated time. So if we finish early between presentations, we'll take a short break. Please look for an email tomorrow from hup@umn.edu that will have a survey and a link to the recorded webinar. So finally, we're so glad to welcome our HCRA cohort. Thank you all for joining us today. Our first presenter is Leah Kostick. Leah, if you want to get started and share your screen, although if you can start your presentation at 10:05 in case anybody joins, that would be great.
Oh, sure. I'll just give a minute.
Sure. Thank you.
Margaret, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it in PowerPoint now.
Yes. Okay, so I have 10:05 here, so we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm excited to kick us off on this webinar, and thank you for being here. As Margaret said, my name is Leah Kostick. I'm a PhD candidate here at the U. And this summer, I had the absolute pleasure of working at Hennepin County with the Housing and the Climate and Resiliency team. And in particular, I worked very closely with the housing team. The Housing and Climate and Resiliency team became interested in best practices around increasing sustainability standards in multifamily residential projects, or what you'll hear me refer to as affordable housing throughout this presentation. And the way I see it is their interest in increasing these standards comes from a few different commitments the county has. So first, the county passed a climate action plan in 2021 with a goal to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Second, the county invests over $15 million annually to support the preservation and creation of affordable rental housing. And finally, the county has a mission to reduce disparities and eliminate inequities. And given that research shows communities of color, as well as low-income communities disproportionately face high energy burden in their homes, this became a priority of the county for that reason as well. So those commitments together really catalyze the Housing and the Climate and Resiliency teams to look into increasing sustainability standards in affordable housing. Yet, when the summer started, the county did not have reliable data on what percentage of county-funded projects were already required to meet sustainability standards from other funders, nor did the county have an established baseline or method for incentivizing a higher standard than the baseline. So this summer, we set out to answer those questions. But first, what do I mean when I say sustainability standards? So sustainability standards are reached through sustainable building policies. And as we can see on this picture here on the screen from the Center for Energy and Environment, sustainable building policies have two parts. The first part is a third-party green building rating system, which could be something like LEED or Enterprise Green Communities. And the second part of this policy is a city-specific requirement, which is also referred to as an overlay. And these requirements are just what they sound like, things that are important to individual cities for their individual needs. When we put these two pieces together, we get a sustainable building policy that can be used either as cities, states, or counties. Together, these two parts create this policy through which sustainability standards are reached around things such as carbon reduction, energy efficiency, mitigating stormwater runoff, natural area protection, and so forth. And this is just the second image to give you a different way to visualize what a sustainable building policy is and how standards are reached through them. So data collection took a few different approaches this summer. So first, Hennepin County staff performed an analysis of existing projects and the sustainability standard requirements those projects had from other funders. From that analysis, as well as interviews, it became clear that many projects were already required to meet sustainability standards from other funders, and so the project slightly shifted into understanding how we could increase above that baseline. Second, 23 interviews were conducted, and you can see the breakdown on your screen here with city, county, state officials, architects, developers, and housing adjacent folks. And 2 surveys were designed and sent out to both developers of affordable housing projects and municipalities or local government officials from municipalities. So from an analysis of the collected data and the findings, 3 proposed strategies or recommendations really emerged of how Hennepin County might increase sustainability standards above the existing baseline. The first proposed strategy is where the bulk of Hennepin County's efforts might focus around, and that is to create a Hennepin County specific strategy. So in interviews and survey responses, increased costs of implementing increased standards was cited as the biggest risk to decreasing production. And so 14 out of 25 developers also mentioned in an open-ended survey that increasing funding was the single best incentive the county could offer to increase sustainability standards. So the first strategy Hennepin County could undertake is to offer prioritization for funding for projects that go above and beyond to reach increased energy efficiency and climate resiliency standards. The second proposed strategy within this larger Hennepin County strategy could be supporting long-term on-site maintenance. So in interviews and survey responses, housing folks routinely cited that on-site and long-term maintenance was a problem and increased costs. For example, a survey, a developer wrote, "We have experienced that some green building requirements lead to highly computerized and unproven mechanical systems that are difficult to maintain and do not promise what is advertised in promising efficiency. A thorough review of this in looking at recent green construction projects would be most welcome." Finally, the third Hennepin-specific strategy could focus on creating a scenario where creating a policy for when Hennepin County is the only funder on a new construction project. So at present, the county does not have a policy for this scenario because city and state requirements always kick in for sustainability standards. But there may be a future scenario where the county is the only funder, and here the county could look to Ramsey County, which has a similar policy for those few times when it is the only funder on a project and therefore the sole responsibility for implementing or requiring sustainability standards. So that's the first proposed strategy that was derived from the data. The second proposed strategy is to support interested municipalities to create sustainable building policies for multifamily residential projects or, again, affordable housing. And this strategy requires some nuance and sensitivity of considering local needs, challenges, and characteristics. Not all cities have sustainable building policies, and not all cities have that much new construction of multifamily residential projects or affordable housing developments. And additionally, some cities may not have the capacity to create a sustainable building policy and implement it to reach sustainability standards. They also face different local politics. For example, in interviews, several individuals mentioned that their city council would be reluctant to implement any policies that would drive away private development. And in a survey response, lack of staff capacity to implement a new policy or lack of interest from the community and city council were the two most cited reasons for cities without a sustainable building policy as to why they did not have one. But still, some cities are interested in creating one. I'm going to show you a quote from an interview that I really liked because I think it dovetails nicely with the third recommendation that we'll talk about. But it also just underlines how cities are interested, but they don't really know the best way to go about it. And they would like to hear from cities who have existing sustainable building policies. So the county could attempt to help those cities create sustainable building policies. And one way they could do that is through increasing collaboration and communication with cities that already have policies. So both cities with established sustainable building policies and those without cited the need for increased communication across the county for sharing of best practices and lessons learned. And developers also brought up the need and interest to both meet with developers to share these things, but also express an interest to meet with local officials as well. There have been some similar past opportunities, and there are a couple of organizations who are doing adjacent work. But there's currently no opportunity to meet together regularly for housing and sustainability folks to discuss these issues. And so here, both cities without policies and cities with policies could be invited to join a working group to share lessons learned and best practices. So I know I've spoken very briefly today, but those were three of the kind of clear recommendations and strategies we saw derived from the data that could help Hennepin County increase sustainability standards in affordable housing production above the baseline. And I'm happy to take any questions. And thank you all so much for listening.
Leah, thank you for your presentation, and you're right on time. I want to open it up for questions. You can enter them in the Q&A, and I'll be monitoring them for the next couple minutes. Leah, we have a question. Are there areas for future research that your work revealed?
Thank you, Abby. So I think one area that for future research is this project focused on new construction of multifamily residential buildings. And one thing that we didn't look at is retrofitting or rehabbing existing buildings and how we can make existing buildings that already exist because they're existing more energy efficient or climate resilient or increasing sustainability standards in that area. So I think that's a really interesting and exciting path forward for the county.
I also have a question. It was around the policy where Hennepin County is the lead funder, and you mentioned that Ramsey County has an existing policy. I'm curious if you looked into like beyond the scope of the two primary metro counties, like at a nationwide scale, is it common for counties to be the lead funders? I don't know if your research covered that or not.
It didn't cover that, but so I'm hesitant to say, but I would assume maybe not.
Sure.
And it's pretty rare. I mean, when I did an interview with some Ramsey County officials, and they kind of stress like it's exceedingly rare that this happens, but it has happened to us. So that's why we have the policy.
That makes sense. Thank you. All right, well, thanks again, Leah. I will transition us to our next speaker. So our next speaker is Ron Smith. He studied local government considerations for AI use. Ron, if you want to get your screen set up, and then you can get started at 10:19.
All right. Oops. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. I'm Ron Smith. I'm about to be a second year law student here at the University of Minnesota, and my project is local government considerations for AI use. So jumping into the project itself, I had the opportunity to collaborate with resident services, specifically with the Strategy and Support Division, and my supervisor there was Jessica Giordano. My sort of first order of business when confronting this research project was narrowing its scope to something relevant and interesting. And so after speaking with my colleagues here at HUP and people at the county, I thought there was a great opportunity to explore this question of how artificial intelligence might have an impact on the county's policy aims of climate action and disparity reduction. For methodology, I conducted a literature review. I pulled from a number of sources. I actually thought it was really interesting that there was an opportunity to pull from not just academic research, but because it's such an emerging issue from policy guidelines and state statutory work that's being done. And that was the source of most of my analysis and recommendations. But I also had the opportunity to conduct these 7 semi-structured informational style interviews with county stakeholders. When I say stakeholders, I had the opportunity to speak with people who were involved in the questions I was interested in addressing, whether they were doing work that could be directly impacted by AI, maybe a lot of data was being handled, or maybe they were involved with sort of onboarding and project development tasks that sort of were relevant to questions about how AI might get used at the county. I thought these interviews were really helpful to not just understand internal processes at the county and make my research relevant, but also to just understand what was going on in people's minds for this kind of, you know, big picture question of artificial intelligence, concerns and excitement at times. So that all kind of came together in this final report. And really, I have sort of 2 goals in that report. And the first is to frame these big picture issues in a way that's relevant and interesting and helps people have discussions about what's on their mind, and also to provide an introduction really to all this literature that's out there. I hope that this report kind of can be a jumping off point for people who have questions, not just about the policy aims I'm discussing, but generally about AI. there's a lot in there to unpack. So getting into the findings in terms of what the impact of AI might be on these two policy aims. For climate action, I based, or my point of reference for climate action was the climate action report published by the county, which deals with sustainability goals. That's how I tied in some of these emerging issues that AI is creating. What's relevant here is this idea that there's a lot of really rapid development happening in terms of infrastructure. Many of you have seen in the news, these data centers are being built. Data centers, I think I would summarize them as an efficient way of organizing all the computing infrastructure that's necessary to support the expected AI uses that are going to be developed. And all that computing has environmental impact, right? It requires a lot of energy. And what I've seen in the literature is that the development and the energy usage is happening so fast that it's straining the grid. And sustainable energy infrastructure takes time to develop. So in the meantime, there's a reliance on non-renewable sources like coal, or especially here in the United States, natural gas is a big source of emissions. And that really implicates some of the county's goals around carbon reduction and environmental concerns. There's also an issue of
Can I,
transparency.
Ron, your presentation's great so far. Your slides
Yeah.
are stuck on the title, so I just wanted to,
Oh,
I think it might be frozen if you want to just unshare and reshare. It just
okay.
helps people track. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Sorry about that. Let's see. Okay. How's that? I think
There
it's
we
up
go.
now.
Yep, I see the
Okay.
finding. Thank you so much.
All right. Sorry about that, folks. Okay. Um, but this issue of transparency, there's not a lot of incentive in the market right now for developers to be transparent about the energy costs, the sustainability costs of their AI models, and that makes it really difficult for project developers at the county to kind of know about the environmental impact of whatever their AI use might be. Um, and sort of transitioning over to the second policy aim, but also relevant to climate action, is this idea that's acknowledged by the county and supported in the literature about how the environmental impact is kind of paid by communities that are least prepared to address it. And more generally for AI, this is kind of a global trend. Um, the benefits of AI are kind of more proportionate to a group of people less impacted by some of the sustainability costs, and the price is paid more by populations that have often less access to these tools and the benefits that they might have. And so moving more into disparity reduction, I think the primary concern there, and something that I heard a lot among conversations at the county, is this question of bias and the ability of misuse and misunderstanding of the technology to enforce biases. And there's been stories in the news about this happening with gender and race, and at local government levels and by private corporations. Um, there's not always the appropriate understanding of how kind of an algorithm goes from input to output. And that creates, a host of new issues around sort of disparity reduction in terms of accountability when things go wrong, and transparency. That's in addition to questions around the existing frameworks of data privacy. Um, let's see. Got stuck for a second. Okay. So for recommendations and next steps, the theme that I sort of found prevailing throughout my research is this idea of responsible use. The county relies on public trust to fulfill its mission to provide services. And so it's that can be eroded very quickly with issues where there's bias or kind of misuse generally with this technology. And so I found it really engaging to sort of consider, the county as a service provider primarily is in a legislative or a regulatory body. So what does it mean to be responsible given those limitations? And that's how I tried to frame my recommendations from the analysis. And what I found really helpful was this idea of soft policy. So for any artificial intelligence use, there's kind of a hard policy, regulations and laws, and then soft policy like guidelines and organizational culture. And soft policy is something I think the county is really good at. There's a lot of internal infrastructure there. To really have interesting discussions and develop internal policies and best practices. So kind of two areas of that I think are useful to discuss is one, this idea of creating kind of comparative evaluation frameworks that incorporate sustainability goals. So there's often I hear for project development this idea of a business case, and I found some suggestions in the literature of how to incorporate sustainability goals into sort of business cases and proposals within local governments. I think that's an interesting area to explore. Going along with that, there's a lot of really interesting toolkits being developed by government collaborations and policy developers about how to use data and sort of think about the risks that go into AI use in terms of transparency and accountability. And there's really interesting guidelines there just for, even if it's not formalized, for stakeholders within the county to think about these issues and develop their projects. And finally, the last sort of thing, and something I found really interesting, is this idea of leveraging the public procurement process to pursue policy aims. I mentioned earlier, there's not a lot of incentive to be transparent from the developer end about sort of energy use, but there are sort of suggestions in the literature of the government using its procurement process to kind of shape the market and create incentives to be more transparent. I think that's a really interesting area to explore. And obviously, I'm going over it quickly here, but there's a lot more to say about that. I'm going to sort of move past this quickly here because I know I'm on time, but I did want to say it was really a privilege to just be a part of the discussions around this issue at the county. And my major takeaway is that creating the space for discussing these like big picture policy issues was really impactful. And I think if nothing else, something really important that can be done at the county to address these issues. And I did want to make time to sort of share my acknowledgments. I wanted to thank everyone that took the time to interview with me. And I want to say a special thank you to my supervisor, Jessica, who was really helpful in kind of developing this project and making it impactful.
Thanks, Ron, for your work and your presentation. I'll open it up for guests. Please put your questions in the Q&A. Ron, I'm curious if you found in your research, obviously Hennepin County is asking this question right now. I'm curious if this is, it seems to me like this is probably a question that a lot of counties or other local governments are asking. Are there kind of front runners in terms of groups or locations that have already created a policy, or is this kind of right on the cutting edge?
Yeah, I would say um, there's some really interesting work being done. One thing is this, it's called the GovAI Coalition, I believe, and it's a collaboration of different municipalities who are interested in addressing these issues. I think that might be kind of at the cutting edge of policy. I definitely think something interesting also is a lot of the work being done in this area around local governments, especially, is around municipalities, so cities. But county perspectives are a little bit different than that. I think that's a sort of extra layer of nuance and kind of an interesting question. And I thought that was sort of a cutting edge area of policy. Like I felt I was considering slightly different questions than a lot of the work being done by municipalities, and that was really interesting.
Yeah. Thank you. I have a question in the chat. How do you envision accountability functioning if AI has a detrimental impact on policies or services? How do we hold AI accountable after an incident?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I can only say a little bit about that, I think, because a lot of my research was considering kind of uh, perspectives from a proactive approach. So, what can be done in the sort of implementation phase. But I think the little I can say about that is having a framework ready in advance and kind of understanding um, before there's an incident, where vulnerabilities are in order to address accountability. Um, that's kind of the start of answering that question. And I think there would be more to say, um, but I think it's helpful to be proactive to kind of know where to look and understand how misuse happens. That's what I would say about that.
And we have one more question. I know we're at time, but we've had a slight change to the program. So, Ron, I think we do have time to answer this question if you are okay with it.
Sure.
This question is, did your research provide any examples of a straightforward policy? For example, don't use AI as a search engine.
Um, there were examples of, well, I would say there were examples of kind of trying to fit AI into existing policy around sort of existing policy around like data practices. But that's sort of still a challenge. And I think AI creates a lot of unique issues that require kind of new policy questions. I guess maybe the what you're asking this question also is kind of straightforward use cases, and that's less clear. I think big picture, uh, I see it as like a technology that's going to have to be decided on a like a use case by use case basis, depending on what the needs are. Um, and so there certainly are um, straightforward policy cases in terms of it must comply with data practices law. And what does that look like? So it creates more questions. But there isn't, I didn't encounter like a straightforward, like one way sort of answer to any specific use case beyond things that maybe are very clear, like um, appropriate, privacy considerations and data practices.
Thanks,
That was
Ron.
a bit of a, sorry, that was a long answer, but I hope I got to some aspects of your question.
All right, well, Ron, thanks for your presentation. Um, I just wanted to say that as I mentioned, we've had a slight change in our programming. So Niama El Sayed, who her presentation was assessing American Indian residents' experiences within the Hennepin County system, unfortunately won't be able to share the presentation today. I would like to thank Niama for all of her hard work this summer on a very important project. The findings will be available at our poster presentation in September, on September 16th, in tomorrow's follow-up email. I'll include information about how to register for and attend that event if you're curious about the topic. And yeah, I just wanted to thank Nyama and the team that she worked with for their hard work. In terms of today's programming, we're going to take a short break so everyone can go, refill their coffees and everything like that. We'll be back with Yilin Wei's presentation about career opportunities at 10:47. All right, Elin, looks like you are ready to go. I think it's fine if you get started a minute early.
I was quite nervous, so why not? Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the presentation. And this presentation's name is the recruitment for underrepresented community youth. I would definitely explain what we mean by underrepresented community youth. So this page shows the two key people for this summer project, me and my supervisor, Amber. I found this very interesting because when Amber introduced herself, she talks about she loves dogs and then she doesn't mind cats. I have a cat at home. I love cats and dogs, but I cannot have dogs for reasons because every time they leave the house, I want to wash them when they come back. So a little bit background information about this project. So Hennepin County Sheriff's Office have been asserting the cruciality of having officers and employees who are from and experienced with diverse populations, and as well as being knowledgeable and reflective about social struggle and common crimes. And at the same time, they have identified there's a gap in the recruitment system that the young people who are aged about 15 to 25 years old and who have been historically marginalized, race, ethnicity, gender, class-wise, and of course, in then other social construction, can easily be excluded from the employment resources and application opportunities of the positions. So for our project in the summer, we hope to identify and describe the possible job search barriers for those underrepresented community youth. At the same time, we hope to propose a bridge program so where the Sheriff's Office become an active player in terms of offering, providing resources and cares and communication, etc. And then in addition, hopefully the summer project can also arouse attention to the situation of socially disadvantaged populations in job searches. So this project is a combination of literature review and community observation. We hope to lay the ground for developing future in-depth communications and better strategies in and beyond the proposed bridging spaces that has been included in this project. So what do we mean by underrepresented community youth? So that was actually my first question for my supervisor, Amber. And she, long before this project, she has put a lot of efforts to reach out to the community, to different communities in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and other areas in Minnesota, and then try to also talk to community organizations who are supporting those young peoples. So she gave me her understanding and definitions of underrepresented community youth, which she means that there could be people who experience instability in childhood for being a foster kid or having parental repertoire or facing various relational challenges in schooling, such as bullying, isolation, hunger, etc. And most of the time, there could be young people who have been targeted or being targeted for having marginalized identities, gender, race, and ethnicity, etc., and then interpersonally and systematically. And then, of course, the majority of them are facing constant unemployment or fragmented employment. And further into the literature review, and we found that the very interesting uniqueness of U.S. as a job market is that compared to many other countries, such as especially countries in Europe, that in U.S. job market, that informal methods of job search is the method or the most popular or important method, meaning job seekers mostly rely on their personal resources, social networks, and then to look for jobs instead of people having formal methods such as agencies and services or directly be approached by employers. Well, if that is the situation, which is the situation as being long talked by many scholars, then the marginalized population can easily become underrepresented in those methods because usually people do not have those personal resources, and even they have those resources, and then the majority of the resources they have may lead them to the inferior, the exploitative job positions. So now we have a picture of underrepresented community youth that we try to, Sheriff's Office try to support and then provide resources for, and hopefully become an employer for those people. And so in our literature review, we try to analyze the barriers for underrepresented community youth through three lenses. The number one is we look into this model, psychological working theoretical model, which the importance of this model is this model gives a very different view contrasting with the traditional models that defined job search situations by taking people's socio-political challenges into consideration. So this model helps to summarize the overall struggles shared among job seekers, especially the marginalized ones. So looking into the elements, the major elements of the model, we can kind of imagine that for a marginalized individual that they may not have positive economic conditions and a lot of social support in that way. Therefore, then that the proactive personality may not easily be merged as and then it's very important to have proactive personality when the challenges and then the difficulties happen. So that's a kind of like a bounce back protections for individuals. And then of course, the critical consciousness as a skill is very important. But in that ways, we're not saying that the marginalized job seekers do not have critical consciousnesses, but in many cases, they may even have like better skills, better capacity in the skills. However, that they in general facing the overall kind of marginalization in the job seeking experiences. And the second lens is we're trying to identify youth. And so we're trying to look at youth from using transitions point of view. So many scholars have saying that the majority of the Western countries since the 70s have entered the advanced, they call it advanced capitalist society. That means that brought more complexity for a youth to be called qualified in transition to become an adult from their childhood because more milestones and requirements are put into their plates, such as housing independence, families, and education development, etc. So in that ways, the society really need to looking into or take into considerations of the two perspective of a using transition, which is the being, as we're thinking that use is their part, use has their own autonomies to be independent, but at the same time, we also need to take into consideration that all of us are the product of our childhood and previous life experiences. So therefore, only looking at the beings may not be adequate and sometimes create harms for individuals. So to looking into their trajectory towards the future is also very important. So scholars have been advocating for considering using transitions from their being and becoming point of view. Sadly, the society and the systems have not yet shifted their views about using transition in that ways. And then therefore they're not showing the responsibility to offer, intervene, interrupt, and support in terms of giving a using transition more spaces to grow and change. And in our big writings, we also spent a lot of spaces to talk about the intersectionality of power for the tensions between generally when we're thinking about law enforcement and the populations in general. There are a lot of tensions such as distrust and all that has been happening in the history and the present. So we try to analyze it from multi-lenses that I created a model which we take into three different dimensions to analyze those powers. So we hopefully then this power analysis can be carried on for the future when we considering not only recruiting or dealing with tensions, then therefore successfully recruiting the peoples who are from the marginalized community, but at the same time, how can the two sides be better interact with each other in terms of properly addressing those tensions. So after all these studies and understandings have been put in place, then we hope to propose a bridging program that can become a space where Hennepin County Sheriff's Office become an active player to provide not only job and then the career development and resources, but also mentorship and communication and a healing space for the community, the underrepresented community youth in general. And these are not just our ideas. We did go into the communities and the community organization and try to collect the thoughts from multiple people. And of course, we also discussed with officers and employees who are currently in sheriff's office, but who probably could be defined as those underrepresented community youth in their previous experiences and in job search in particular. So the last part.
Lynn, I just want to invite people to start to put their questions in the chat. You're welcome to continue speaking. I just want to prompt people to get their Q&A in since we are coming up on the last couple minutes of your presentation.
Cool. Yeah. The last part of our summer project, because as an observation, we went to some community events. We also reach out to community organization and try to talk to, we also engage with several young people in a kind of like unofficial ways. And then we listen to the stories of the current employees in sheriff's office of their experiences in job seeking and their working experiences in the sheriff's office as well. And then based on all these information stories in particular that we try to highlight it, a few statements for future discussion. And here are the statements that we have highlighted. And then I want to address the importance for the last one, that it's very important question to ask and explore for what can be a space for community healing be like. Here, I want to advocate for all of us to keep thinking that healing for whom, which has become a very interesting movement in many of our conversations. So here are the conclusions so far for our summer project. And as I mentioned at the beginning, like this for time limited and resource limited for the summer, I consider this when the project ends, will be a new start for the longstanding effort of Amber's team to keep working and serving for the underrepresented community youth. And then hopefully that they can have not only an employee-employee relationship with Sheriff's Office, but they can co-create a better communities for all of us and then themselves as well. Thank you.
Elin, thank you for your presentation. I don't see any questions at this time. We have another 30 seconds or so, but I'm glad you used the time to finish up your presentation. All right, not seeing any more questions. I'll turn it over to Chinmay. You can get started.
Thank you, Margaret. I'll share the screen. Okay. So, hello everyone. I'm Chinmay, and I'm here to talk about my research with Hub, with the digital experience team at the Hennepin County during the summer. And I would like to thank all the speakers before me for sharing their valuable research. So basically, my research evolved around understanding Hennepin County, like centering resident needs for segment-based approaches. our research goal is basically foundational to deeply understand the residents we serve so we can design digital products that solve real life problems. So historically, the counties offered services. The shift we're trying to do is to design products that are intuitive, accessible, and built around the residents' actual needs and behaviors. So to do this effectively, there's a need to move beyond one size fits all approach, and that requires like a multi-layered approach to customer segmentation, and that's what we're trying to do in our objective. And the outcome, as I'll show you, is a few community segments and evidence-based pain points to inform human-centered design of digital tools that we've come up with. So why segmentation? Like I told you, we need to do segmentation, but why do we need to do it? Is because the county serves a diverse population, that digital equity cannot be generalized in it. The prior efforts showed common pain points, but lacked contextual differentiation in it. So the goal is to create evidence-based resident personas tied to digital behaviors and needs that we can work on and combine in our already existing journey maps. There is something stuck in my throat. So the process and approach for the project was data-driven, community-informed. So basically a mixed method approach. There was the basic foundational research I started with. We're analyzing a vast collection of public data, county reports, and strategic documents to understand the landscape, along with talking to stakeholders and experts around the county to get a feel of the project and to understand the population in general, how the stakeholders in county are looking at it for now. From there, I used qualitative data such as surveys, SME interviews, and advocacy reports, plus quantitative data such as ACS, SVI, DHS reports to develop pain point hypothesis lists that were validated using ACS tables like internet access, disability, social characteristics. What I try to focus on is needs. So while thinking of where the most population of the county would be interacting with the digital products would be the people who are coming back to it regularly, and they would have a need to it. A general population will come once or twice a year or even less than that, but someone who has a need with the county would be coming back to it again and again, and that's the population we should be focusing on to improve their pain points and to target their challenges in terms of a product design. The next step was to add geographical and behavioral analysis on it to just not make it one-dimensional and make sure we cover all the aspects of it, and then validation and enrichment of the report as well, which we did through RX cohorts in the digital experience department, which are community leaders, representatives that we talk to validate any kind of equity designs and changes that we're thinking of in the digital experience team. So the first layer leading to 7 segments, out of which 4 are there on the screen right now. The senior homeowner, the new American family, job seeker with a disability, a low-income smartphone-reliant parent, and basically 3 more in emerging entrepreneur and local investors, residents with high mental health needs, and transition age youth. So these are 7 segments that have some kind of regular need with the county, as I've mentioned in a few points in the screen, I guess. And demographically, they are diverse as well, but there is overlap between a few of them. So we're trying to move beyond demographic representation to move beyond biases that may be created because of focusing on any kind of cultural or racial experiences, but that doesn't inform your interaction with the county or your challenges that you're facing. It's more likely a need-based, income-based, or accessibility-based challenges that people are facing in here, which could be addressed by also integrating it with geographical and behavioral lens. So the impact on product design is like it informs context-aware designs. If we're able to map the geographical locations of a lot of these segments, we're able to also find the behavioral lens of the people living in these geographies, because a lot of points in here like broadband access and median income, housing status, they would inform the behavior of the population in those segments as to how they will be interacting with online products. And that's how we could also create another layer on top of the needs-based that we had already started. Now going lastly to the validation steps that we did. That led to another layer to be added when interacting with county community one-on-one and having in-person interviews, which is the attitudes and mindsets of people, which based on their needs and their attitudes with uh, devices, it still might differ with how their attitudes is in regard to how they want to interact with the county in general. So these are also factors that could be included in the segment designs, and that's what I did include in the segment designs, and that's how we've created these personas by synthesizing the segments for better design with these three layers to overlap and create like a single rich persona in the center. So this multi-layered understanding allows our product teams to move beyond generic requirements and design for the whole person. It allows to like ask better questions. How do we build a secure document upload feature for a reluctant, privacy conscious senior on a fixed income? Just an example of how it could inform product designs. Now, sample segment deep dive to show what kind of segments we are putting forth through this research for the product team or for the business partner or for anyone who's interested to inform their decisions based on this. So who they are, the geographic concentrations, the digital behavior, the access factors, what matters to them in terms of services used, concerns, and preferred communications, the barriers faced by them, and the design implications at the end. So the whole segment is divided into different parts that could define them properly for any kind of decision making in the future. Now, finally, the pain points that would lead to the design improvement, product design improvement, are also laid out for each of the segments, which are divided into severity and prevalence. And then the notes are what would help in the improvement. Now, I've been talking about digital products, but to inform what the digital products are in the county would be a basic product analysis of it, where I was able to get through a few accessibility factors here, like the plain language score and the color contrast with the primary functions and the owning department of these digital products. So this is just a sample list of a whole array of digital products that the county offers, but it encompasses a lot of the resources and a lot of departments all together. So it shows how it could spread out all throughout if we could combine all these pain points together to be targeting different kind of challenges and pain points we got by this analysis, which is through a pain opportunity matrix. So the pain points that we got through our segment analysis, and by finding out the challenges could be put together, and the severity of each of these pain points with the segments could be put together to find out which one is the most important, and that could be linked to the product analysis, which leads to a pain opportunity matrix where we could focus on the challenges that would impact most of the population right here. So tying the segments to services and UX touchpoints right now. So the segments serve as the bridge between user research and product improvement, and they can be plugged into like service blueprints or web form redesigns. Like example for like let's say seniors applying for any kind of property tax deferrals. So that's a segment with high trust concerns, high accessibility needs, and low digital confidence. So their journey map would look something like this, and the design implications would go through into how we could improve for that particular segment into leading to a more accessible and equitable web design or product design. Now, the next steps that we've come up through this project is to be able to integrate internal county data systems for further explorations, where we could probably get higher impact intersectional segments. Because right now we've been approximating, estimating, and assuming a lot of these factors, which do define and lead to kind of equitable decisions. But if we're able to combine it with internal county systems, we can integrate into product roadmaps and create a dynamic automated updation model that can keep updating these segments internally in the county for the future to come. And then we could go across and add like barriers and service overlays with pain points, which could show up with like property services versus HSP, HDs, or financial analysis. And then that could lead to a whole system being created in the county to lead equitable and uh, better decisions for the segment challenges.
Chinmay, thank you. I don't know if you have more slides, but I just wanted to prompt people that they can start to put their questions in the Q&A if they are interested. Chinmay, I'll turn it back to you in case you have anything else you'd like to say.
No, I think this was my last slide. Thank you.
Sure.
I would like to thank the digital experience team. They were very, very helpful and very proactive in being involved in informing the projects, as this was a very diverse project with not a lot of focus on a particular area. We had to brainstorm a lot to focus on what it is exactly we're trying to achieve here. So yeah, shout out to the DX team.
Hey, Chinmay, we do have one question. What is the most unique thing that you found throughout your research?
Most unique thing that I found in my research is that a lot of people don't like to be put in the same bracket based on their cultural and racial similarities, which is something before starting this project I would have, if people would have told me to divide populations, that was my go-to. But doing this research has informed me that people like to be more divided into their life experiences rather than their cultural or racial similarities, I would say, in terms of any challenges that they face. And like interacting with products is one of them.
Thank you. Well, Chinmay, great presentation. Thank you. I will move it over to our last presenter. Ashu, if you want to start sharing your screen.
Can you see my screen just to confirm?
Yes, looks good.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ashu. I'm a second year PhD student in the Department of Applied Economics here at the U. And in the summer, I was with HUP, wherein my project was to quantify the extent of precarious housing in Hennepin County. Let's start off with the definition. Precarious housing means like the individuals, it includes all the individuals who are currently staying in a housing that's not affordable, or they are staying in someone else's apartment in an overcrowded situation, or staying in a housing that's unfit for habitation, which has a structural issue. Then we categorize them under this broad category of precarious housing. Now, within that, we have doubled up. So doubled up just include overcrowded situation wherein, let's say, I don't have a lease and I'm staying in someone else's apartment in an overcrowded situation because of economic hardship. Then that's called as doubled up. In the summer, I worked basically with data set. One is Maxis. It is an administrative data that I got from county. So all the residents of Minnesota applying for Minnesota benefits like SNAP, rental assistance go through this application portal. And in this application, we have information of applicants' current resident status, but it lacks information on overcrowding and actual poverty level. So the estimate that comes out of Maxis, I've categorized it under precarious housing, whereas in American Community Survey, there is an information on actual poverty level and also overcrowding status. So the estimate that comes from ACS, I quantify it as doubled up. To give you the highlights, we can see that for 2023, nearly 20,000 individuals were precariously housed. That comes from Maxis. and 4,871 individuals were doubled up, which comes from ACS. So we can take doubled up as the bottom line and precarious housing as the top line. Now in this presentation, I would go over four. First two would be using maxes, wherein I will quantify the extent of precarious housing. Then I'll talk about its variation across socio-demographic and space. Then using ACS, I will also quantify the extent of doubled up homelessness and also explore the variation across socio-demographic. Let's start with our first objective, which is to quantify the state of precarious housing. We can see that in the figure, we can see the number of precariously housed individuals and households over the years. So we can see starting from 2022, the number has been relatively constant at about 19,000, 20,000, 19,000. So we can say that precariously housed individuals has been relatively stable over the years in Hennepin County at the application level. Now moving forward with second objective, let's start off with the variation across race. So we can see that almost 50% of precariously housed individuals comes from black households, and the next 20% is from white, followed by Hispanic, Asian, and multiracial and other categories. Now, if we see how common it is, if we see the rate of precarious housing within each racial group at the application level, then we can see that the number is pretty between 10 to 15% across all races. We can see a slight decline for multiracial group from 20% to 12.5%, and also for American Indians, but we don't see a stark disparity across all race groups. There's a minor 1 or 2% difference, but not so much stark. Now, if we move to the A's, again, we can see that nearly 30% are comprised of minors, followed by those aged 18 to 24, and nearly almost 70% of precariously housed individuals are below 34. So we can say that all the precariously housed individuals, most of the individuals are either minors or young adults. Now, just like with race, if we see the variation, if we see the rate within each age subgroup, we can see that number ranges from 10 to 20%. There's been a slight decline for 18 to 24 over the years. So we can see that for minors, across all age groups, we can see that there's not so much stark difference at the application level. Now moving forward to the spatial variation. So the graph shows the percentage of precariously housed individuals by zip code, dark red color signifying higher rate, and light yellow color signifying lower rate. So you can see the Northeast metro region has a higher rate of precarious housing with dark red color, and the West region have relatively lower rate. Now the figure in 2024, I've modified it slightly over here, wherein the size of the circle shows the population. So we can so higher circle size means higher population in the zip code. So we can see the left zip codes are sparsely populated compared to white, and the histogram over here shows the distribution. Like for instance, what we can see is that half of the zip codes have rate below 1%, whereas half of the zip code has rate above 1%, and that higher rate falls on the East region and more predominantly in the Northeast region. Now, the estimate that comes up is for doubled up individuals, and this is using ACS data. You can see for 2023, 4,871 individuals were doubled up. The margin of error bar here just tells us the confidence, how confident we are in our estimate, because we're using ACS data and coming up with a number. We want to be sure how strongly confident that it is a true estimate in reality. So what we want is a very narrower band. So the confidence interval at the high level just means how precise is our estimate. So the number was 4,871 for 2023. If we break down across racial group, now here in the figure, the left panel shows the number. the number breakdown, the breakdown of 4,871 across racial group, whereas the right panel shows the rate. I would just like to focus on the right panel and more so on the first two columns, where we can see that the rate for Black individuals is nearly 13 times than that of white. So it is a stark difference. The reason for that is because it is a stark difference compared to Maxis. The reason for that is because the estimate comes from ACS, and ACS is more representative of the overall population, wherein Maxis is just at the application level, and not everyone from the population apply in the Maxis, so we see the stark difference. Now, if we see the breakdown by A's, again, the left panel shows the number and the right panel shows the rate. I would again like to focus just on the bottom two columns, wherein we can see that the rate for 18 to 24 is nearly 5 times than that of minors. Again, we are seeing a stark difference compared to Maxis data. It is, again, because of the same reason, because ACS is more representative of the overall population. I would say that the precarious housing rate has been pretty stable over the years, starting from 2022 at the application level, which is at 20,000. Now, across races, we see the precarious housing rate of 10 to 15% using Maxis data. However, the doubled up rate for Black individuals is 13 times that of white individuals at the population level, and this comes from ACS. Likewise, the precarious housing rate for young adults is 15%, is very slightly higher than that of minors, which is at 10% at the application level on an average. Now, when we see the result from ACS, we can see that 18 to 24-year-olds is nearly 5 times, doubled up rate is 5 times than that of minors. The spatial analysis showed that the Northeast metro region has a significantly higher precarious housing rate, greater than 1.5%. Now I would like to thank my supervisor, Richard. With weekly meetings and incorporating a lot of feedbacks has really been helpful with all the technical support that he provided, and also Lauren for introducing me to the priorities of the housing team, and Liz for providing me with the data support and also feedbacks on how to visualize this findings properly, and then Hop for providing me with the opportunity to work on this project in the summer. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashu. It was great to have you working on the project. I'll open it up for questions. If anybody in the audience has any questions, please put them in the chat. Oh, it sounds like there's a request, Ashu, if you can redisplay the slides showing your conclusions.
Should I see the first or the second one?
It looks like that met the person's needs. Thank you. Let's see. And one person was wondering if there would be a presentation on the entrepreneurial experience through Hennepin County. That is not on today's agenda. We will wrap up in a couple of minutes, so apologies if there was something miscommunicated in our promotional materials. I'm not familiar with the entrepreneurial experience through Hennepin County. I don't think that that's a hub program. So I will see if I can look into it and provide information in a follow-up email. All right, well, Ashu, thank you. If any other questions come up, I will refer them to you. But Oh, it looks like I do have one more question. Did you find that there is any key component missing in the services that the county or state is offering that would help mitigate this precarious housing situation?
Uh, I think the research was mostly on the exploratory side. So I think moving forward in the report, I've included like the follow up what the county can do on the research side. So my focus was just on the just exploring the current scenario of how it looks like in the county using both Maxis and the ACS dataset. So just a brief overview of how it looks like right now.
All right. Okay. Well, a huge thank you to all of our presenters, all of our student presenters for sharing their time and research with us. And thank you to everyone, all of our attendees for joining us today. I'll put a link in the chat if you're able to fill out this feedback form. Thank you so much for attending the webinar. HUP would love to know more about your experience. And like I said, that the link to the evaluation and a recording of today's webinar will go out tomorrow. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And we hope that you continue to connect with HUP in the future.